Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We're in part 6 in the series on personal transformation, and today we're talking of this concept called the wheel of change, which you would have heard of in multiple contexts. So the wheel of change is referred to in terms of transformation, in terms of social context, transformation of countries. In general, as a philosophical context, when we say wheel of change, we mean the time cycling over and over again. So it's a fairly universal concept. Today we are talking of it in the context of how do we enable personal transformation. So of course this has been the previous parts of the series. We've spoken of answers using somatic work, body plus language and emotions as well. We've spoken of languaging also from the perspective of life sentences and beliefs. So that's more the inner language part. And the last time we spoke about how do we shift the inner story, the kind of story that we tell ourselves about our own lives, our own history. How do we shift that if it's not working for us, that is. So today as we speak about the learning to, learning theory says that there are 3 levels at which we need to learn anything, whether it's learning cycling or learning a job skill or a language, or for that matter life lessons in general. If we have to initiate transformation, we need to learn something other than what we already know. And for any kind of learning to sustain, it needs to happen at 3 levels. The order of the levels might differ depending on where we start off. We could start off at any of those 3 levels, but for it to be integrated, for us to be able to live that change, live that learning, we need to ensure that all the 3 levels are anchored within us. Let me start with the bottom level, which is the cognitive level. What we mean by cognitive learning is the conceptual aspect of learning. Okay? So conceptual could mean, for example, if I'm learning something as practical as driving. Okay? The conceptual aspect of learning, the knowledge, the recognition, understanding part of learning would be in terms of traffic rules, it would be in terms of the car and how to operate the mechanics of it. It would also be in terms of the rules or rather social sensitivity part of it, in terms of when do I give way if there's an ambulance passing by, for example. So those are things that can be learnt cognitively. I can go to a driving school and I can learn the cognitive part of it. However, that's only one part of the learning. The learning gets enhanced when I start applying it, which means there is behavioral learning also. Okay? So the moment I take my car and actually drive on the road, put that cognition into practice, which means I know the rules, now I'm actually applying those rules, is when the learning gets stabilized further. Otherwise I may be a good backseat driver, but I may not be able to face the reality of traffic. Right? So the behavioral aspect of learning really anchors it in that it brings out things that cognitive learning cannot. Only when I'm driving on a dark road in the rain will I figure out how to really control the car in that scenario. No amount of cognitive or bookish inputs will help me do that, right? There's certain things can be learned only through the behavioral mode. So cognitive learning deepens as we step into the behavioral piece of learning. So in one sense, cognitive learning is the what part of the learning and the behavior is the how of it. The third piece is equally critical, and sometimes that's the piece that fails us if we forget or in some ways are unconscious about it, which is the affective part of the learning. This is derived from the psychological term affect, of our attitude. And for any learning to sustain, there also needs to be affective learning. It needs to hit the affect. Which means, apart from learning how to drive the car,
in terms of values?
Yes.
Part of that.
Yes.
Touch our beliefs.
Yes, it has to become a part of my belief system, sometimes also be integrated as a value. Which means I need to be convinced not only of the what and the how, but also of the why of it. So I may understand how exactly to operate this car, I may know traffic rules by rote. However, if I choose not to be sensitive, if I choose not to be mindful and present when I'm driving on the road, no amount of training is going to help me or the people around me. So affective learning is about, why should I bother to drive safely? Why should I be sensitive towards my fellow drivers on the road? Why should I watch out for pedestrians in an area where there are also people traveling on foot? And that no book can really teach me that. It's really about me wanting to figure out how does my being here and my doing what I'm doing, how does it impact the world at large. So no matter how good a driver I am, if I'm not convinced of the why of it at any given point in time, I may fail, and I may dangerously fail as well. In that I might choose to say, okay, this road has no cameras really, I'm not likely to be caught, so let me drive at breakneck speed, and in the process I might end up hurting myself or hurting someone just because I'm not present, because I'm not mindful. So affective learning is as critical as behavioral and cognitive learning. And this goes for everything, right from learning a language to learning project management to learning something in engineering to conversation skills. Once it's anchored in the affect of the individual, we find ways and means to learn cognition. We go all out to find the right book or the right website or the people to be able to get the information that is needed, if you're convinced of the effect of it, if you're convinced of the why of it. The what and how can be easily figured out.
That is why I think that is on the top priority.
It is. See, because unless this happens, this won't sustain. The moment my cognition and my behavior will sustain only if I have a fear of the camera on the road or there's a cop on the road. The moment that external anchor, that external motivation is taken away, all the behavior and cognition is of no use. Still, it's anchored in my own affect. And that goes for all kinds of learning. If you were to think back about things that we have perhaps not learned very well, it often is not because we were not capable of the cognition or the behavior, but because somewhere it didn't sit in the affect very well. Like if I were to look back at my own life and look at, let's say, something as simple in school like maths, okay, I never liked numbers, okay? And I did 5 years of taxation through college. Don't ask me how, but at the end of it today, I need a CA to do my own taxes. I can't maintain my accounts. Not that the cognition was not good, my grades were perfect. Not that I couldn't apply it when I was asked to. Something in me was not convinced about why should I bother to learn this. There was no response to that as a child about why is trigonometry important. Nobody really told me, and perhaps I didn't ask as well.
Or nature's rule, use it or lose it.
Yes, the use it and lose it applies because it doesn't get anchored here. The moment it anchors here, I know I have to use it. I have a reason to use it.
There may be people who may not done so much calculation, other thing, but they are in that field.
Yes.
They may be good.
So there is a reason for it, right? The why is answered for them, and therefore the behavior and the cognition follows.
Yeah, they may have made the changes.
Yes. Once we are convinced at this layer, then we will do anything to make these two things happen. We will go all out and put superhuman efforts to learn the other two pieces, if we are convinced of the effect. So that's the precursor to what we are talking about in terms of the wheel of change, that when we are looking at initiating transformation, and it could be a very simple transformation also, it doesn't have to be something earth-shattering, but the important piece is that if we are able to anchor this here first, then the other two pieces are easy. It's just that very often we are trained to initiate it either here or here, either in terms of behavior or in terms of cognition. So I want to bring in that perspective as we proceed here. So the wheel of change model in itself is represented in many ways. This is a very simple representation of it. What we are saying here is that for transformation to happen And while we are speaking of this in the context of personal, individual transformation, it could very well apply to a family transforming relationships internally. It could apply to a society, a community, a nation at large as well. So for transformation to occur, we're saying that changes have to be integrated at 3 levels. Okay? One at the level of the heart and mind, which is akin to the affective learning process. And we're deliberately saying heart and mind together in that it's about, of course, being convinced of it mentally, but also having an emotional buy-in for it. If I'm convinced of it only logically but don't really feel for it, at some point again it's not very sustainable because there is no internal alignment. So the heart and the mind have to come together about whatever is it that we're trying to shift here. So one level of change is at the level of heart and mind. Second, of course, is the behavior, in the sense that if I'm convinced of something, how do I act it out? And third is in terms of structure. Now in this case, when we say structure, we mean internal and external structure. What is what is the environment within me and what's the environment outside of me? If either of these don't facilitate or allow for the change I want to make, then I need to do something to shift that structure. I need to do something to shift that environment. Now the transformation can begin at any part of this cycle. It can begin at a structure level or a heart and mind level or a behavioral or the behavioral level. But once you've started it off, we also need to make conscious effort to do the other two or link the other two pieces as well. So, what are the possibilities of change at each of these 3 levels? At the level of heart and mind, we're speaking of shifting our beliefs. It could be shifting emotions. It could be shifting motivation to do things, which we've spoken to a great degree about in the last 5 pieces of this series, where we've looked at various ways to shift belief, shift our story, shift our context, which we spoke about the last time. So those are ways to look at how do we enable change at the heart and mind level. When we mean behavior, we mean behavior in terms of how we behave with ourselves, behave with the world outside. Behavior is also in terms of the habits that we exhibit on a day-to-day basis, our social conventions and norms that we choose to follow or not follow, as the case may be, and in general the choices that we make in life. Right? Sometimes the choice is to do something, sometimes the choice is not to do something, to ignore something as well. That's very much a choice as well. And then structure, as I said, is the environment, internal as well as the external environment, which we call our world. So we get into the nitty-gritties of how do we use the wheel. If we are looking at, let me take a simple example of transformation, such as, let's say I want to have a more, if I want to have a healthier lifestyle. Okay. So assuming I'm a very busy executive, I do 14 hours a day at work and travel the rest of the time, and there's hardly any time for myself, and I'm looking at figuring out how do I live more healthily. There are multiple ways or multiple points where I can begin the process. One way to look at it is to begin at the level of the heart and mind, where I could begin by articulating my purpose. And if I'm doing this in the context of this extremely busy work-life schedule, I could look at figuring out what's my purpose in doing this? Why am I doing long days at work? What meaning does it hold for me? And sometimes I may realize that it genuinely does hold meaning for me. In that case, I need to look at how else do I supplement or support that purpose. Sometimes I may figure it's really not holding any meaning for me. So I may, for example, say that I am doing these long hours at work because I believe that my work contributes positively to the world. So I may be a surgeon doing hours of surgery, but I know at the end of it I'm doing it well and I'm healing patients, and that gives my life meaning. So that gives me purpose, and therefore the idea is to figure out, okay, if I want to continue to do this, I'm enjoying the purpose, how do I support myself better? However, if my answer is, I'm not really doing it because I have any meaning here, I'm doing it because my boss expects me to show up in office and stay long hours, then somewhere I'm not anchored there. Then we need to look at, okay, then what is the real purpose of it? So I'm not enjoying doing 14 hours a day at work, but my purpose maybe at this point in time is to make sure that things are very comfortable for my child who's growing up. That could be my purpose at this point in time. So then I can walk back to say, if that's my purpose, if the idea and the meaning, what gives me meaning in life at this point in time is to serve my child, then the rest of the things flow from there. But it becomes important to articulate that purpose. What is giving me meaning? And that meaning can shift for each of us over a period of time. That there could be anchored in different purposes at different points in time. Even as there is usually an overarching life purpose for each of us, which could be something very broad like service or
Using
love.
same example, if it is for the purpose of money, then is it a real purpose? Because sometimes we get deluded by,
Yes.
I want to have this much money, but my purpose is different sometimes.
Yeah.
More comfort or something. So at that time, is it that a real purpose?
Okay, so if I were to delve into that, the money is the output of my work, right? There are two other stages to that. Now, money is the output. What outcome does it lead to?
I mean, that is why I am working 12 hours to 14 hours. Purpose is to get the money.
Yes, so I get the money. Now what?
Yes.
What do I intend to do with the money?
So that is not the real
One
purpose.
Little story came to my mind about purpose. There was a man who used to collect religious books of all, means whatever language, region, and he has the purpose that one day he is going to read that book.
Okay.
So he started collecting, and he keep on collecting and started employing peoples so they can translate.
Okay.
So he can have somebody he can read. This keep on going. The man whom he employed, they keep on informing him. It's already you have enough. Let's the purpose for which he has done. So, but he keep on collecting, and towards it dead bad. He asked them to give a summary. So they come out with several pages. Then again he can't go that much. So they reduced to few pages, then to one pages, and by that time he lost his life. So purpose is lost. Means, the purpose, and means many people, I would just put, they are collecting say money maybe, or position, power. How means never taking time to stop or think,
reflect.
Coma.
Yeah.
Means are you means what for? As you told, what you are collecting. Like for
Real
child
purpose.
the person may be saying 14 hours working, but how much time he is spending with child, the child one.
Yeah. So there are three things, since we are speaking deeply about purpose. If there is a question about is this a real purpose or is it not, one way to look at it is it an outcome, is it an output, is it an outcome, is it an impact? Right? Money is the output of my work. What's the outcome of my money? Maybe I can live in a great apartment or a bungalow or afford a good lifestyle. Okay? What's the impact of doing that? Is it enhancing my sense of satisfaction? Is it giving a better life for the people that I care for? Am I able to, because of that money, serve my child or my parents or whoever is it that I'm living with? So the meaning lies in the impact, not so much in the output of it.
Yes, that's true.
So yes, a lot of times it's the output is used as an excuse in the form of purpose, but that's usually not what anchors us. It doesn't give us meaning. regardless of whether we're talking of transformation or not, outlining our purpose and questioning it from time to time is always a good idea. And I think when we are working with our own purpose, it's important for us to give ourselves permissions for two things. One, we may not be able to find that one word or that one sentence and articulate it properly, and that's okay. It's always a journey and it can always keep transitioning. Number two, it's a never-ending cycle. It's not a destination. It's not about saying that now that I've found my purpose, I've arrived. It's never that. Now that I've found my purpose, I've perhaps started. And it's always a journey. It's never a destination there. So we need to hold ourselves well when we are working with our own purpose. So that's one piece of work in the heart and mind space. The second piece is in terms of intention. Now when we mean intention, it's about articulating very clearly why am I doing what I'm doing. Yeah, what for. So yes, my purpose gives me meaning. Through that meaning I choose actions. Now what's the intention of this particular action that I'm doing right now? And every action that we do, if it's intentional, the results are much better, or at least the efforts are in place. We make an authentic effort to do what we do, and then we're also in acceptance of whatever results happen at that point in time. If the intention is not very clear in terms of why am I in a conversation with this person, or why am I doing this lecture, or why am I cooking food, then somewhere our efforts are never complete, because we don't quite know why we are doing what we're doing. The third piece in the heart and mind space is the idea, and you may also say a competency, a skill of mindfulness as well, in terms of simply being able to be present here and now, in this moment. Any transformation, any change that occurs in the instant of a moment. It's change. Transformation is never a long drawn process. It's that moment's click which says, okay, I'm no longer this, I'm this.
Abrupt.
Yeah. So, and that moment can be captured and utilized only if you are present in that moment, if you are mindful of that moment and aware of who we are not, and therefore what do we wish to do. So mindfulness becomes a huge capability to build in this space. There are of course very many ways to build it. We can look at meditation, we can look at other kinds of reflective practices, journaling, a lot of spiritual practices which help in developing mindfulness as well. The last two things are equally important. One is, are we able to extend compassion to ourselves? A lot of times our compassion is extended out to the world. We're very generous to people outside of us, around us. But when it comes to ourselves, we have this huge inner critic that is never quite satisfied. And therefore, if my purpose is to be able to give a good life to my child and I'm doing these long hours, my inner critic is likely to say, are you nuts? Why are you doing this? You're hardly spending time with the child. Where is the point of working like this? And yet there could be a part of me that very much enjoys the work that I do as well. Right? So it is important for me in that conversation to also hold that space for myself and say, yes, I need to keep visibility of my child because that's where my focus is at this point in time. At the same time, I also need myself to allow space to enjoy. I genuinely enjoy my work, and therefore let me not criticize myself for doing what I'm doing or not doing what I'm not doing. Either way, that compassion also needs to extend to oneself, because otherwise the critic that rules us will eventually also rule people around us. So we need to be extremely mindful of that inner critic. And at the same time, assume responsibility for everything that we do. At the end of the day, we create what we create of our own lives. We've created our happiness and our sadness both. And we have the will. The second piece is behavior. Now, very often, this is a piece that's often easily handled. There are enough apps and tools and techniques and courses and workshops that we'll find around this in terms of how do we set goals, how do we make commitments, what kind of practices do we evolve about things. And these are equally critical as well. It's just that these two boxes without this won't hold for too long. It's like saying that, it's like making a New Year resolution and saying I'm going to go to the gym every day this year, right? And that's a goal that I set. But if that goal is not anchored against a purpose of wanting to be fit because there is work for me to do in the world, that motivation to go to the gym is not going to happen. So just setting the goal in itself is not enough. It needs to be anchored both ways. The goal needs to get linked to an activity. The goal also needs to get linked to a purpose. Both ways. The wheel needs to complete there. So yes, goals are very much important. How do we commit and what do we commit in terms of time, energy, resources, efforts is just as important. It really also helps to articulate very clear practices that I could look at to enable my goal. So if I'm saying I have to go to the gym every day, what kind of practices do I put in that will enable that? Which means I should be able to schedule myself and use my calendar properly. I probably need to find, let's say, apps that make life easier. So instead of going to the grocery store, if I can get somebody to deliver food home, I get that much time to perhaps go to the gym and exercise. So what kind of day-to-day practices can I evolve, which could sometimes also be through support of others. It doesn't necessarily have to be all by myself. I could seek buy-in of my colleagues or friends or family to say, hey, here is what I want to do, so support me in this, enable me to do this. It could be in terms of asking my family that, okay, I want to spend, let's say, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. in the gym every day. Would you be okay to perhaps have dinner before that or after that, or maybe join me in the gym in that time so we can spend family time together. So that's one way of seeking support. We don't have to feel alone about the process. In fact, the more we seek support, the greater the chances of achieving that goal.
The chances are there if you go to gym, if you will find that circle.
Yes.
People already who are boost our...
Yes, that support system builds around you as well. Absolutely, yes. And very importantly, seek feedback in terms of, I'm doing what I'm doing, how is it impacting you as a person around me? And again, that's mindfulness getting expressed in action. In that, it's not about me being alone in the world, I'm part of a larger circle, and if my doing or not doing something has an impact on the world, then I need to understand what do I do about it. So that's the behavioral piece, and this piece is relatively easier and accessible in terms of learning because there are enough books and courses and material that you will find even online. The third piece is to complete the wheel is the structure. Now the structure is an environment. Now to a great degree it is external environment, assuming that the inner environment is largely taken care of by the heart and the mind. But sometimes it could also mean inner environment. So when we say structure, we mean that if I have committed to a certain purpose, I have goals around that, what is it that I evolve to make those things happen, to complete that cycle? I could have a series of activities that happen in order to fulfill the goal. So for example, if I've decided to go to the gym at 8 p.m, I need to schedule my activities in a manner that perhaps I leave work at 6, get home at 7, get some rest or something and then leave for the gym. So how do I schedule my day-to-day activities? Right? How do I work my calendar? A lot of times we are slaves to our calendar in terms of saying, oh, I don't have time for a certain thing. So do I control my calendar or my calendar controls me?
Reframe it.
Is a question. Yes, so to reframe it and figure out what are the things there that are really important and what are the things I assume are important. It's just become a habit without quite meaning or contributing too much.
Just a small point about the scheduling you told, no? Many times it happens, it's my experience also, the things you like or want to do, if you do, so you find the time, and many times we are wasting, I will say, on unproductive things or things that automatically means our system is such that I will put it, it will find the way.
Yes.
I don't know how, but that's it.
Yeah, so again, if
purpose is clear cut.
Yes.
Goal is set.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, because a lot of times purpose may be clear cut, the goal may be set. Sometimes we become a little mindless when it comes to the activity. And when I say activity, it could be as simple as maybe going on Facebook, many times a day, or perhaps checking WhatsApp all the time. It's an activity. It does consume my time and energy.
But those are distractions.
Yes, it's a but I choose to do it.
I distinguish between a distraction and the supporting system.
Yes.
Which is supporting my goal and purpose.
Yes. Yeah. But a lot of times at the level of activity, we get so busy we don't quite think of is this useful or not useful. Yeah. Because there are some things which come as a part of social expectations, and therefore I'm supposed to be on social media and respond to WhatsApp messages. There's that kind of a belief that happens. A lot of times there are certain activities I choose not to do, though I may like it, because I'm trained to feel guilty about it. Right? So it's like maybe I want to take time off to go for a movie when there is a lot of stuff to do at work. But I really want to see a particular movie and I might derive enjoyment out of it. But if I do go, I am trained to feel guilty that I was irresponsible and I should have done work and I could have spent time with my family instead and all of that. So there are certain social conditionings that we also need to overcome as we work through this. A lot of our beliefs come up in action here.
Or what people will say, or
what people will say or think, or all of that. A lot of our social conditioning becomes very visible here, and we need to look at how do we overcome those. So activity schedules, our relationships of course become a very important part of it. So if there's any relationship that is not facilitating the kind of transformation that I want, then I need to look at how do I work that relationship out, how do I change the conversation there, how do I perhaps make a request of that person in a manner that my goal can be accommodated without quite harming the other person. How do I engage in that dialogue is very important here. Again, this is an area where a lot of assumptions work, and it becomes important to question that assumption. So if I want to go to the gym and my child might come and say that, no, I want to play with you now, it's a disabling relationship at that point in time. At the same time, I don't want to discount the wish of the child, so it becomes important to have that conversation and figure out how do we work this out. Do you want to accompany me to the gym, or can we speak sometime later, or maybe I don't go today and sit with you, but can you understand if I start going regularly from tomorrow onwards? That conversation is important. A lot of times we make that assumption that the child is always more important than the gym, so I'll not prioritize myself, I'll give priority to somebody else, and that disables the entire process. So any assumption that happens here needs to be broken really quick.
Just relationship, many points are picking my mind, sorry for interrupting. Relationship, actually, one lady who used to go to a psychiatrist, and she experienced after visiting him sometime that इलाज तो उसका हो रहा है, पर लोग उसके आजू बाजू के लोग ठीक हो रहे हैं.
That's true of healing in any way, right? I mean, the moment you heal, the entire environment heals around you.
Because the person gets that feeling,
Yeah.
people around are not working. When
No,
himself
it's
is
both
not.
ways. Yeah. One is, probably you're seeing issues in them because I was seeing them. Two, it also flows the other way around. Because I heal, they heal as well. So it works both ways.
Butterfly effect.
Yes. So it is genuinely a cycle. Therefore, the relationship piece becomes very critical here. And also look at processes and tools which can help me structure my environment better. So processes could be as simple as what do I do first thing in the day, how do I approach a certain task. So if I have, let's say, 2 hours in the morning to clean the house, how best do I go about it in a way that I'm least tired but most efficient. So looking at processes that we outline for each task that we do, whether it's at work or home or any other space, and looking at what kind of tools are available to enable this structure. And technology has enabled a whole lot of tools. There are apps for pretty much everything that you want to look at now. There are enough gadgets available for home and kitchen and other spaces. So there's really no dearth of tools.
A simple tool is paper and pen. You all need.
If nothing else, a small notebook and pen.
Write what you want to do in the day, and
yes,
you other things make the changes.
Yeah. So there are multiple tools that are available to work with here. So the point of this entire wheel of change is we may start anywhere, right? I may choose to start with a process, for example, or I may choose to start with a tool and say, okay, let me install an app for a nutritious diet. Okay, I could start with a tool, but I have to go back and integrate it in the other two spaces for that tool to really come into fruition, because otherwise it will remain a tool, it will remain on my phone, but not really serve the purpose. So the wheel needs to get complete all the time, otherwise it's stuck at one place. A lot of times when we set goals for transformation, it is set at this level or sometimes at this level, but we have to work back there for it to really hold and for the change to become transformation. Changes might happen here, right? 31st December I might set a New Year resolution and for 1 month I might go to the gym. There is a change, but is it transformation? Is it my new way of life? Not necessarily. Right? By the end of January my enthusiasm would have petered out and I'm back to square one. So till I anchor it in the heart and mind space, won't work. So the wheel needs to keep spinning. So yeah, that's what I leave you with. How do you spin your wheel? Simple questions to ask in terms of, if here is a certain transformation I want to work on in myself, what's my inner work? What do I need to do in the heart and mind space? Therefore, what change do I invoke in my behavior? And as a result, what is it that I want to shift in my environment, in the structure of my life in general, which could include all the spaces we operate in: work, family, community, friend circle, all of that put together. So have fun spinning your wheel. Thank you.
Thank you.